Okay.
Let's call the meeting to order.
5:35.
Okay, and first thing on our agenda will be the approval of the minutes from May 24th.
And here's Tom now.
Yeah. Can I make a motion to approve all three meetings, both the meeting from May as well as both our special meetings minutes as presented?
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? No, all in favor of approving the minutes of May 24th, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes from May 24th are approved. Second approval will be for the minutes from the May 28th special meeting that we had. We have a motion for that?
Oh, John moved to approve all three of them at the same time.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Try to move it on in this 100-degree weather, right?
Yeah, that's fine. So we approved all three of them then.
Yeah.
So next we move on to public comment. I don't know, Mike, is there anyone out there?
There is, we have a reasonably good sized group. Let's see. And we have people that are presenting. We've got Dan from the Paulsbo School District. Our typical Hank is there. We've got the Paulsbo people, the mayor.
I think the question is there anybody?
Do we have any public comment? Do we have anyone with their hand raised for public comment?
I do not see one.
Okay, then we'll move on to the financial review with Ryan and Scott.
Okay, let me promote them and get them into the meeting. There's Ryan and Scott.
Hi there.
Okay, so are both of you going to be presenting or just one of you?
I think Ryan will probably be doing the presenting.
Okay,
Okay.
let me raise him
So, hello.
vice chair, a co-host, and then he can share. Okay,
Well, while that's happening, I'll give a quick introduction to what we'll be speaking about here today. I want to, first of all, Scott Bauer and myself are from Northwest Municipal Advisors. We're the financial advisor to the district. We work on helping with bond financings and helping to size deals appropriately so that, when the district is ready to proceed, that they're in a shape that you feel comfortable with. So what we've been tasked to do is to help develop a long-term cash flow for the district, looking at both the previous years and where you've been on revenues and expenses, as well as where we expect, going forward with certain expenses.
Uh-oh.
Oh dear. We may need to have Ryan call into the meeting.
Yep. Ryan, you froze.
Well, let me.
you're not able to share, Ryan?
There you go, Ryan. He looks like he's back.
Yeah. Maybe.
And
Can
noticed
you folks hear me?
There we go.
Hello? I can hear you well.
Can hear you now, Ryan.
Okay.
There we are.
And I'm sharing my screen now, so hopefully you're able to see the spreadsheet that we've been putting together or organizing. Mike and I took a first crack at it, kind of going through all the various expenses and revenue that's coming into the district, and then was then passed through again. Then Darren and our team looked at it again to make some adjustments. What you're looking at here is it's a kind of a conglomeration of a lot of documents that you've seen in the past, but we've summarized them all into one place to make it a little bit easier to follow. If you end up looking at this, you'll see that a lot of these are linked to previous documents that I'm just going to click through just so you can briefly see them, but maybe documents that you may recognize from previous meetings or updates that you've been parts of. And you'll notice throughout, I'll go back to the summary page, but essentially all the information you're seeing here is linked in one way or another to that. Where I guess we'll just quickly walk through what our initial assumptions are, and then we can, if you have any questions regarding how the model works, we can follow up with questions then. And then if there's adjustments that need to be made down the road, I believe that the plan is to just take a first look at this here today, and then at future meetings, we can make adjustments to the plan going forward once you've had a little bit more time to digest it, as this is your first chance to look at, a big picture view of, the next 21 years. So the tax, first of all, you have your revenues.
Do we lose them again?
I think we have.
Yeah.
Well, let me take over. Unfortunately, I can't move the cursor. I think it's on Ryan's spreadsheet, but we'll see if he comes back. So I think.
Well, let me see if I can promote you as well, and then either one of you can do that.
Oh, got it.
Ryan's back.
Ryan, I think you're back. Why don't you turn off your video for one, see if that helps.
Okay, my video's off, and hopefully we're able to go from here. And so I apologize. We're looking at the revenues. I'm not sure exactly where we lost, but I'm just going to start walking through the columns, and then we can talk about what the differences may be. So we're looking at the revenues. We've estimated a 2% increase for revenues going forward. As you will see that in 2021, we, even with the updates that you received so far, this number likely projects slightly higher. But we also know the future years, with this being such a unique past couple of years, we didn't want to overly assume the following years going out. These each can be adjusted based on various assumptions. But currently we have them linked just the 2% at the top of the page as an easy way to follow. And then for operating expenses, we're using a 1.5% increase. But as you can see, historically, we've seen, drastic flows up and down from those, although the number here in operating expenses is significantly lower than what we're seeing in the revenues. And so even though it's drastically different, the dollar amount, although the percentage is drastically different, the dollar amount does not fluctuate nearly as much, I think, as the percentages, in relative to the revenues that you're bringing in. I do note through conversations with both Mike and Darren that in 2022 operating expenses may be higher than 1.5%, but we've used this as a plug number, but highlighted the 1.5% for now, just to, as just a reminder that this number may be slightly higher than what we're seeing today. We've plugged in the 2011 bond debt service, and then plugged in what we think is an estimated for the refunding of that debt service, matching what we've talked with the county about as far as refunding what is out there currently to the almost a straight refunding through 2026 with one maturity of $5,000 that goes out until the very end, allowing for the revenues to continue to flow through 2041. We've also added in the bonded debt service for the 2015 bonds. And what I've noted here, and just so you know what this is, the coverage ratio, these are essentially your senior lien bonds. And so we like to just show what the coverage is of the revenues coming in to be able to pay off these bonds, and what this percentage is, as these are your first priority to be able to pay off following your expenses. And then we'll start talking about, so we have our net revenues from there. And then we have what we've used as a rollover balance of money that was available from previous years. We did not track back previous to 2020, but we did know what was available at the beginning of 2021 for projects, and then added essentially your rollover balance with your net revenues to show what available funds are can be available for projects for primarily these four main projects that you have set up here. We've looked at estimated really about when you're expected to be asked or requested for these funds. So we plugged in estimates here on what those might be, and then noted how they're going to be paid, below. And so they are not necessarily a direct correlation from one year to the next. You'll notice, like for example, this $600,000 is expected to be paid in 3 increments, and so we have it being paid out through these 3 years here in $200,000 increments. So if you're looking for exactly how we're estimating they're being paid out is over here. And once they're actually paid, we're going to kind of follow the money into move it from this pile into this pile so we can track it to see how much is actually being paid and making sure that they're on budget for those particular years. What we've done here is once we've gotten past these first couple of years is what these payments are going to be, but what we really have here is then we have the bigger payments for all of these significant projects, and we've put together amortizations for various scenarios, 0% interest, just showing what that cash flow may be. And then with Port Bremerton, what the agreement came to is that one's been plugged in here, starting with payments in 2022 through 2031. And then the remainder at the very end of the year. As you can see right now, it is conditionally formatted to highlight if we get within what I've kind of termed let's say a little bit of a reserve, making sure that if they're below, if your ending balance is less than $500,000, they become highlighted. And of course, if you go negative, the number itself will actually turn red. So as you're testing out this model, you can plug in, let's just use this one as an example. Excuse me. More 0. You will see how that affects the cash flows throughout, that the district has to offer.
Oops.
So I think at this point, what we can do is what we have estimated for, I think some of the assumptions that you'll see here is that, what came up, I believe, is at the last meeting was $1 million for Port Orchard. We have plugged that into, being able to pay that all this year. And as you can see, the cash flow does allow for that. But I think it just, please be aware that one, as you're deciding on one project to another project, that we do have to, there have to be some compromise, I think, in between projects and how the money is going to be paid out, in certain years, particularly through the 2025 year until the relief,
Ryan may have frozen, but I think, one point I also want to make that I think supportive of what Ryan was about to say or was saying, that we do have, I guess, a number of assumptions plugged into this model. And, I guess with any assumption, we could either be too high or too low. For instance, I guess on the sales tax rebate line, we're showing a nice constant 2% increase. Of course, in recent years that's been different. And certainly if we rolled the clock back by 12 years or something to the Great Recession, we would have seen, some dramatic drops in sales tax. So again, it's all taken with a bit of caution when we're showing these models that, sometimes we're showing a very ideal picture, but, we are just trying to, though, convey, take together some of this disparate information, put it into one spot, and then allow you to say, yes or no, that is the right assumption, or that isn't, again, whether it's growth rates or whether it's project payouts. Again, just trying to use this as a tool to bring together all that information for some visibility. And I don't know if Ryan, have you rejoined us? If not, I think we probably were about ready to turn it back over to Mike and the board members if there are any questions.
As Ryan had mentioned, I had gone through this sheet with him in order to try and identify, to the best of our knowledge, from what we've learned from the projects and what I understood from their planning, as to when those expenditures were likely to occur. So you can see from that yeah, if you scroll over to the right.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm now sharing this, so I'll scroll over.
Okay. So where these funds were requested initially, to where I think they're going to wind up occurring based on the information that I have from the projects. Of course, the $1 million from Port Orchard was a recent request. That may be at the end of the year or then the last quarter. It may carry over into 2022. But most consistently, most of the projects are not looking at major construction or where we'll require bonding to support that construction if we cannot get an allocated funding program in place. So all of these are shown demonstrated as allocated funding, which is the preference of the board. So that's subject to change if we have to bond for any one of these projects.
So Mike, were these the approved dollar amounts that we have voted and approved on for each one of these projects?
Yes and no. For the Port Orchard project, yes, that was committed to the full $12 million. For Paulsbo and Kitsap County, those are only committed for the amount that we're under ILA today. And that is for $244,000 to Paulsbo, and the number's not up there, but it's about 1.7 million to Kitsap County. The rest is subject to approval as we get into different phases and they present different information to the PFD about what their funding requirements are going to be and what the timing of those are going to be.
Okay, so you just used the assumption that these were going to go for those dollar amounts.
They are in the timeline attached to the ILA. For instance, the Paulsbo, we're only committed for the 243.9.
Understood.
By the ILA, but they have identified at some point they're going to go to the city council and say, we have proven through our feasibility studies that this is viable and we want to go ahead with the next steps, which will be the actual detail planning and the construction drawings. And that will be up to as much as $2 million, and it would be spread over the next couple of years, this year and next. So that's what's shown in this estimate.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because this looks, when I first look at this, it looks like we've approved funding in these dollar amounts for everybody. And so what it really is these are what these projects, we think these projects are going to run. And if we choose to fund more of them, you've put that money in here already.
Correct.
And under this scenario, we don't actually do any bonding. Is that correct?
If we are able to negotiate a allocated funding program, which is shown in these three columns for the top three projects, correct, we can do that without selling bonds ourselves. But that forces our partner to sell bonds for the whole total and get paid back part of the principal on our time schedule.
So essentially, this is three more arrangements like we currently have with the Port of Bremerton.
Correct. And that's what both Darren and Bill were projecting months ago when we started into this commitment for funding, if possible, to negotiate with our partners to find out if they are able to bond for the total amount when the construction number is known, and that we would repay our portion of the principal with no interest, no debt service charge, and allocate it out over time. So we don't know if that's going to happen, particularly with Port Orchard, who's the weakest of the three as far as their bond capacity. And Scott and Ryan, I don't know if you have enough knowledge of Port Orchard's condition to verify that or not.
I don't think we could say that at this time.
Okay, seems reasonable. Then I probably misspoke in saying that I don't think that they're, we'll evaluate that when we come to it.
Right. Well, and I think we've asked that question. And I believe Mayor Robb responded that they would bond. That's been discussed previously, correct?
I think they would rather not.
Yes, and yes, he did say that. You're correct.
I'm sorry, John, go ahead.
They would rather not, as that limits their capacity to bond
Right.
projects, etc. So I think we'll have to cross that bridge when we get to it. But is there any
Okay.
Scott and Ryan that we need to make tonight, or is this just for us to start digesting?
Yes, I think this, from our standpoint, was largely informational, so you could see the spreadsheet that we had put together. And again, our plan is to continue to take in information, and we could also be providing different scenarios as needed. But I think we can certainly work again with Mike and Darren. But I think from the spreadsheet standpoint, I think that was the intention.
And one of the key things was the inclusion of the $1 million in the end of this year for Port Orchard, and to see what the effects on what our finances are and if that was tolerable to do, considering the commitments that we've made to the other projects as well. And that doesn't really show up until 2024 and 2025. No, let's see, 2023 and 2024, where we have our pink periods there, where the balance in our cash account is going to be lower and more susceptible to shock if something else happens.
Are we able to get this to be able to spend some time going through it, Scott?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess Ryan led the charge on putting this together, but yeah, I mean,
just so we can see do we get it in an Excel or a PDF or something? So
We've shared it with a number of folks, and you guys are more than welcome to share it with each other and to start to understand it and play with it as much as you like. I think what the plan is that we will hold kind of a master document, because there's just a lot of voices, and so just to make sure that whatever changes are being made, we'll kind of try to rail in those pieces of it. But yes, you're more than welcome to look at it and see how it works and verify, or if there's any changes that you think that need to be made, please bring those to the group's attention, and we'll be glad to make any changes.
yeah, totally. I don't want to make any changes in it, even if I could see it in a PDF. There's just so much information on here. I'd love to sit down and read it. So
Yep,
Mike, do you have it already?
Yes, I have the original version, and I have this version as well in the office. And Ryan and I did play with this quite a bit in our previous conversation. We changed the refunding of the 2011 bonds to where they were level term all the way out through 2041. And that alleviated most of the short-term problems, but it gave us a little less money on the back end. But that continued high debt service is what leaves us with this shortage, this rollover fund balance in the pink in 2023 and 2020, 24 and 25. But we looked at spreading that out over the full 20-year period. But from conversations with the county, they're not in favor of doing it that way.
So you'll forward this to us to be able to spend some time reading it?
Sure.
Scott, is there a significant difference between the bond terms that say Port Orchard would get if they sold bonds and what we would get if we sold bonds? Is one cheaper or more expensive than the other?
I suspect, and this is without having done any research on Port Orchard, that Port Orchard, if they can do it, would be able to sell it as a general obligation bond, which typically would provide lower interest rates than what the PFD could issue, which you would issue it as a sales tax revenue bond. So again, without digging it in, I would expect Port Orchard, depending on their bond rating, could be a little bit less expensive, lower interest rates than the PFD.
And the same analogy might apply to Paulsbo and the county?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
We have any more questions for Scott and Ryan?
I just want to make one last point that although we're not, as we refund the 2011 bonds, once those are refunded, those will be locked in. And so essentially, if you did want to change the structure of that, you really have one shot at the apple to do that when the refunding comes up. But if you're looking at just kind of reallocating the funds, on the other side of it, which is, your expenses side, those you can then move from project to project to create relief, or from year to year to create relief in the years that you wanted to. So just be aware that if you did want to restructure the bonds in any particular way, you could, but you do only get one chance to do that.
Yeah, and Ryan is saying that because typically when the bonds are issued, they're going to carry a 10-year call date. You can pay up for a shorter call, and there's potential other differences. But I guess you should have in your mind that, unless we set it up differently, that you are going to have, as he says, one strike at this to structure it how you want it to be structured. But also, to Mike's earlier point, is the county did express interest in this sort of structure, which is essentially the same structure as you have now, just lower debt service, with then the small piece extended out long so you can take advantage of the extension of the sales tax rebate.
Has the county committed to this structure already?
I would not characterize it as committed to it. We had the one conversation with them, I think it was back in May, with the finance committee, and it was just they expressed their interest in this structure. We did mention to them the extended structure where we basically stretch it out and equal payments each and every year, and this was the structure that they indicated was their preference.
Any other questions?
I think last question, was there a time frame on our one shot with the bonds?
The county, I think, was working through another bond issue, meaning I think like on their utility side, and was not yet focusing on the refinancing of this. I think they thought it could occur later this year or into the early part of next year.
Okay, well, that's it then. Thank you very much, Scott and Ryan.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to the regional project update. I believe that's the PERC project.
Yeah, let me get the Expo people in here.
Good evening, KPFD
Yeah,
board.
I think we've got all of them now.
Can you guys hear me okay? Okay.
Yes,
Mike, are we ready to go or are you still working?
no, go for it. You
Okay.
and Peter are there.
Yes. Well, good evening, PFD board. I'm Carla Boughton with the City of Paulsville Planning and Economic Development Department. And Peter Bacciuello from Petite and the PERC project manager is with you this evening. Thank you for carving out some time for us to give you a project status update for the Paulsville Event and Recreation Center. Oh, and actually I do want to also see that Dan Schoonmaker, our Parks and Recreation Director, just popped on as well. So that is your PERC team for tonight. So the last time we were here visiting you was in March, where we gave you an update on the kind of where we were with our community input outreach and the beginning of our steering committee work. So we have a bit more to report to you, a bit more substantive for the feasibility study that I'm excited to share with you. So with that, I'll go ahead and share my screen when Mike lets me.
Oh, that's right. I have to promote you.
You do, sorry.
That's all right. Where are you? Why aren't you showing up in my list? There. Okay.
Okay.
My apologies. You should be okay now to share.
Okay, can everyone see it? Okay, excellent, thank you. Okay, so as I mentioned, this is our project status update for the Paulsville Event and Recreation Center. So tonight, we're gonna update you on the activity that we've made from April to June. That's going to summarize quickly our community outreach. We hosted an online open house and online community chats in March. We've made progress on our market analysis. We have contracted with a
recording in progress,
an architect firm, and we began our site concept and space planning with our steering committee. And we'll conclude with the request for an amendment to the ILA with the KPFD. So as we were reporting to you at the end of March, we were just in the middle actually of an online open house. And I'm sure, as you know, under the new format of public engagement and community engagement, this online open house is a new technique that has evolved. So we decided to jump on it and use it as well. We had some refinement of surveys available. We also had a professionally produced video that we presented as part of our open house. Regarding the PERC, we also had 2 live community chats that we held the last week of March. And in conclusion, for that month, we had good follow-up participation. We had another 200 surveys and comments provided to us. They really reiterated and refined many of the sentiments that we had from our fall survey. Not surprising, we had some concerns expressed about the funding of it and what that might mean to the average taxpayer in Paulsville. There were questions about what the final mix of uses and activities would be due to the site size. And all of those results are posted on our PERC webpage, and that webpage is on there for your information. Of course, all the questions regarding final mix of uses and funding are part of the feasibility study, so they will be addressed. So I'd like to report a little bit about the market analysis work to date. We have Burke Consulting as our consultant of record for the market analysis. They've finished their demographic assessment of anticipated catchment area. They've completed the research on national regional recreation trends. They've completed their review of similar facilities in the region. They've conducted interviews with potential user groups, stakeholders, and did a business outreach. They presented a draft demand, or the preliminary demand analysis to the market analysis work group. And I think I might have mentioned to you last time the way we've structured our community our community engagement through our steering committee is we have a large steering committee that then members of the steering committee have volunteered to also participate on smaller groups related to each of the tasks outlined in the ILA for the feasibility study. So we have a smaller group of our steering committee, that's our market analysis work group. So Burke presented their demand analysis on June 17th, or the preliminary demand analysis got some feedback and are actually finalizing it this week, and we'll be presenting a draft to the city next week. So on to the site concept and space planning. Our architect from ARC kicked off their involvement on the PERC project with the June 10th steering committee meeting. That's where they introduced their team, they presented their schedule, and they talked a bit about program balancing, desired activities, and costs, and then they did a site preview. And I'm going to share a couple of their slides that they presented to the steering committee for you, just so you get a flavor of what is coming next for the PERC. So they presented this graphic, which I think really illustrates where we're at in the process right now, where we have these all these ideas from the community, and we have ideas that are being refined through our steering committee. And so we have the arrow going up, meaning we have great ideas and lots of programming, and that expands the square footage of the building. And that's our needs-driven piece of our needs or wants, should I say, driven piece of the program. And what those ideas are right now is ARC broke it into these 3 columns here that they presented to the steering committee. All these ideas came from our survey activities, and then the Burke study, which is our market analysis, shows that these are other uses that would be generating revenue, and then they have some ancillary extra uses that would be the architect firm would suggest. So these are all the indoor programming ideas that are floating out, condensed to this one slide. And then here's our outdoor programming ideas, where again set up the same way. Survey results here for our outdoor uses for the fields, the 2 fields that we are programming for the PERC site. Again, Burke studied the demand for that, for those types of fields, as well as other outdoor uses, and then additional ancillary or extra complementary outdoor uses. And so the other side of the equation, of course, now is the program balancing. How do we afford all the hopes and dreams of those previous slides that I just showed you, all the ideas from the community and the way to program the PERC facility. And so this is where it's going to start getting constrained, because you're going to look at the site constraints, and you're obviously going to look at the cost constraints. And that really is what we're going to be talking about at our next steering committee meeting, which is July 15th. Is how do you balance those ideas of activities and the site and the cost constraint. So we're really at kind of this great place where the rubber starts meeting the road on taking the community sentiment, the way to the desires to program the PERC, the way to ensure also the uses that need to ensure the needs of the PFD for economic uplift. So that's coming soon, coming in 2 weeks. So they also, ARC's shared this slide, which I thought I wanted to share with you, because it gives a sense, again, of the relationship of the site to the Marketplace and to Olympic College and Western Washington campus to the north. And that there is, again, a number of retail, residential, and business park uses that are just immediately adjacent to this site, and all can be, working complementary with each other. And so, again, what we're going to be talking about at our July 15th meeting is balancing the program between taking the wide net of ideas and the needs and the hopes and constraining to what can fit on the site and what can be afforded. So that is where we were 2 weeks ago on July 10th or June 10th, I'm sorry. And so the space planning and site concept options will be discussed at our July 15th. Like I said, we're going to be talking about the program desires with program means. And from that meeting, not at the meeting, but from the meeting is where the preferred concepts are going to be developed. So after that meeting, ARC will, with the executive team, the PERC executive team, and we'll start defining those preferred concepts based on the input received from the steering committee. We'll also, like I mentioned, receive our demand analysis portion of the market study from Burke Consulting. This will be really important because those will be our two for an August. I think we're looking at maybe an August meeting where we're going to bring the two consultants in, and we're going to have our demand side and the supply side talk to each other and talk to the steering committee about what the market can support and bear and what the site can bear and what the building can be programmed at. So I think that's going to be a really great meeting too. And I think we're looking at late July or early August for that meeting. And then once we go through that, we will have some preferred once we go through that, the steering committee will come up with some preferred concepts, and we will be presenting those to the public most likely mid to late August to September, and to gather feedback on the ARC concepts and the steering committee preferences. So that is what's looking ahead. I just wanted to continue to show you this timeline. We've presented this at all of our status updates. It hasn't really changed. It's just showing that we're still on track for completing the feasibility study in 2021. And then finally, I'd just like to speak briefly to the ILA amendment request that we'll be making, and I know it's your next agenda item for discussion. So I just want to thank Executive Director Walton for letting us add this to the agenda, and I appreciate you facilitating this request from the City of Palco. We would like to amend a section of the ILA to allow for the city to use approved part-time employees solely on ILA PERC tasks and approved by the KPFD Executive Director, and we would document by invoicing. And so the second bullet here shows the proposed amendment as well as the packet. We have a formal letter and the request for amendment in your packet as well. And it's just this red underline is this suggested amendment, proposed amendment, just again asking for us to have part-time labor. So not full-time, no benefits, use for them for PERC tasks only. We believe that there could be time and cost savings by the city hiring folks directly rather than going through an RFP process with consultants. We also, primarily the reason we like to use this is because we have some very talented steering committee members who have depth of experience in these types of feasibility studies as well as capital improvement projects and capital facilities. And I believe that in preliminary discussions that they would be available to work on this project. So that is for your consideration. We acknowledge the executive director and your legal counsel has reviewed the proposed amendment. They both acknowledge this is a departure from your board policy, which usually avoids funds for internal overhead expenses. Again, understand there could be cost and time savings through this casual labor versus consultant. We acknowledge that your staff determines that this isn't acceptable as an exception, but the city also acknowledges that this is a policy decision and we just appreciate your consideration of it. So that concludes my status update, and I will go ahead and stop sharing, and the PERC team is available for any questions you might have. Thank you.
Carla, I do have a question on the issue of the ILA requests, and then maybe this is getting into the new business, so maybe it'll kind of merge into that next section. But I guess one is with the funding to pay for the part-time things, was that not considered or raised as a potential issue back during the original process? If not, why not? And then second, on the amendment, it's talking about, you know, board approved, and I forget the exact language that you had up there, but talking about board approved, you know, work. Does that mean you guys are going to then need to come back to the board, you know, and we're going to have to start making decisions and kind of, I don't want to say micromanaging what's approved and what's not, but I just don't want to keep getting inundated with requests to say, here's what we want to do, or here's what we're going to do or have done, you know, please review and approve this. And so we're kind of then looking over your guys' shoulder more than we might otherwise do. And, you know, for every kind of potential thing, you know, it would also not only, you know, be a departure from our prior policy, but then you're asking us to kind of get more involved into the nitty gritty of what's approved versus not. I don't know is appropriate.
Real quick though. So Phil, hold that, and that's our next item on the agenda.
Okay. All right.
So let's move through this. Any questions about the update?
Carla, back on one of your earlier slides where you talked about outdoor needs and indoor needs, and you had a long list of potential activities. Were those in order of priority from your various surveys or anything? Because I noticed the top of the indoor needs was aquatic activities. Does that mean that more people were interested in that than anything else, or is it just one of many?
Well, as it turns out, more people were interested in aquatics than anything else. But I do believe that list was not put in order of the community survey. So it could be that aquatics was there because it was an A. But to your comment, as it turns out, it was interested. It was at the top of the survey, the community's interest. But we also understand that is.
That's where the big bucks are.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I do want to know, Mike's been attending all our steering committees. He's representing y'all well. He's made it clear that an aquatic facility is not on the table as part of a KPFD funded piece. So I just want you all to know that we understand that part clearly. And we agree, of course.
Thank you.
And it was not out of anything except of experience with what we've done with pools in the past and what our experience has been with the pool at the North Kitsap Regional Event Center. And the study that we did back in 2011 about pools and their use and their cost of maintenance and upkeep. So it's something that tends to make pools less attractive. They're great until you get them in the ground, and then they cost a whole hell of a lot of money.
Yeah, and that'll be our next meeting where we'll start talking about the desires of the community and the realities of affording their desires.
Any more questions? Okay, so now we'll move on to new business, which is the ILA revision. So do you need to talk about it more, Phil, or can you just carry on from where you were, Carla?
No, I'm happy to answer the questions that Phil had. Yeah, so let's do the second question first. And Mike, thank you for putting that letter on the screen so we all can look at it together. So what we're proposing is an addition in the red underline saying that the PFD approved part-time labor solely dedicated to the work defined in the ILA. So the first thing would be is that we wouldn't be asking the board to oversee any changes to the work. It's what's already in the, already identified in the ILA in attachment A. And that the second sentence is that we would provide an invoice to the PFD documenting the dedicated work performed by the pre-approved part-time employee. And so what we would say for pre-approved is just that we would run, we would let your executive director know who we have been able to negotiate, I guess, for lack of better terms, to do the specific task in the ILA, that we would bring them on as casual labor, and just to ensure that he agrees and acceptable with that hire. So it does give your executive director the authority to make that, to confirm with us that we're okay to hire this person and use the ILA funds for that person. To your first question of why wasn't this thought about, I guess it wasn't thought about because I think we thought we would use consultants. We have a project manager. We knew city staff would be involved, and what we wanted to do was hire consultants for specific areas, specific tasks in the ILA. And what we have realized now is that there's actually a bit of a time lag just going through the procurement process for consultants. And we believe that we have a couple, at least one, if not two, members that are already volunteering their time as a steering committee member that also have similar expertise and experience as a consultant firm would. So we just would like to have that flexibility. I see that Peter's raised his hand, so I'll go ahead and turn it over to him to add anything to our rationale for why it wasn't originally part of the ILA.
So one of the things that we realized is that when we organized our steering committee, we had some real quality talent that was available to support, but they also weren't necessarily established as an independent consultant. So the ability to contract them directly as an independent to the city became hard with the insurance requirements and the business requirements. And then to actually have those people come in through a consultancy creates a burden of cost that wasn't anticipated because the original thought with the draft management plan, which is where the bulk of this work is going to be, was that it would be a city-led effort. So where we find ourselves now is the availability of city staff to move that effort forward is challenged by other commitments the city has. And some of the resources that we've targeted aren't necessarily set up to work as an independent consultant versus much easier to have them support the city as a part-time on-call employee. So that is where the thinking of why we're asking for some part-time folk. It doesn't have anything to do with not anticipating the work, doesn't have anything to do with not being able to afford the work, but it has to do with a shift in the availability of city staff and the availability of local talent to provide the best quality documents that we need to finish off the feasibility study.
Can I ask why this wouldn't be considered as part of 5.7, that we give you credit towards the amount of matching funds that you're paying out of that, as opposed to amending section 5.3?
Can we scroll down to section 5.7?
I don't, if it's, Mike, if you're using the letter I sent, I did not, I didn't include it in there, but.
We can certainly
read it to you because I have it up in front of me. Yeah. City funds, the city shall keep an accounting of all city staff time, city expenses, including consultant fees and city contributions directly related to PERC development. This accounting will be considered part of the city match to KPFD funding.
Right, so we are doing that now. We keep track of our staff time and any contributions the city sets out, and we don't ask for reimbursement from that. So this request, I believe, is different than that, although I'll see what Mike says, because we would be asking for reimbursement for this particular employee.
But yet we're giving that as part of the allocated funding, as you know. So if we give you $12 million, you can use your match $12 million through city expenses such as payroll. Because I guess I will have a problem supporting this, because if I open this up, this is the same wording that we use in all our ILAs. Ooh, say that 3 times fast. And I would want to change that in all our ILAs.
Okay.
To make that.
And I think my other issue, I think that keeping the matching funds high. So, if the city's, supplying more labor than maybe they expected, that just keeps our funds free to probably deal with what we're going to face with cost overruns and other things, given the increased cost of materials for construction and so forth, which, may, when you come back and say, hey, this is going to cost more than we expected, we don't say, well, we spent more, we paid for the city's staff. Now we can say, well, we didn't pay for the city staff as part of the matching, and we can use it for the potential cost overruns. I guess is kind of the other side of the coin to John's.
Yeah, we're not planning on changing the amount. We have, in the ILA, we have tasks, we have dollar amounts set for every task. And this would just be under the line item that says consultant. And there's a dollar amount there. We would just use some of that for the part-time employee as opposed to a consultant. So it's not increasing our bottom line in any way. It's just using it in a different. It's using it outside of the consultant parameters,
So you're going to be hiring these people no matter what, either as a city employee or a consultant. And make sure I have this right. And if it goes as a consultant, you'll be billing the PFD for that.
We're correct. We're billing the PFD for
the consultant.
Yeah.
Okay. And you expect this to be less expensive?
Yes.
I think it will be. It should be less expensive and probably a more efficient product for the PFD to receive, simply because of the availability of the talent to do it. Folks that are already indoctrinated to the project already know the city of Paulsbo, already understand where we are in our process. So they're going to be able to pick it up quickly. They're going to be able to deliver it smartly. And they're very, very tuned in to exactly what the feasibility study needs. Whereas a consultant, we could procure one, we could bring one in, we could immerse them, we could get them up to speed. And by that period of time, we're probably through the money that we've set aside for that task. And that really is what boils down to the desire to see if we could get part-time on-call labor directly through the city.
Brian, is there a prohibition to us paying a salary for city employees with our funds?
No. There isn't. I think it's less a legal issue than a policy issue. The PFD has always said in the past, we don't want to pay for our partners' general overhead or have their staff time on a project allocated as a PFD expense. So it's really more of a policy issue here.
And I just want to kind of conclude, I guess, is that this isn't the PERC team, which is myself, Dan Schoonmaker, and an administrative support person, is not being paid by the PFD. This is our match. We also will have my hours will continue to increase because someone's going to pull the whole feasibility study together, and that will be our side of it, because we have different consultants doing different pieces, and the city team will pull all the pieces together and draft the feasibility study. That is what we're doing. We're just asking for the ability to hire some hours to do a particular ILA task that was identified as a consultant led task. But I want to assure you that if you decide that this policy change is not the direction you want to go, we will hire a consultant and we'll get it done. There is no, we're crossing the finish line. This was just a way that we thought could have some time and cost savings. But I understand your reasoning and your thoughts, and I want to assure you that we'll get the work done. But we made the ask because we think there's a way that we can do it more efficient.
So Brian, would this obligate us to any set amount of time, or can we cancel out of this if we don't like it in a month?
As the PFD's as the ILA is currently drafted, I don't think there would be that sort of cancellation option. So if the board is interested in considering this, that may be an additional element to put into an approval.
So once they hire the part-time employee, we're going to have to pay them until that job is done.
We will define what the task is. We'll define what the task is. So it's not that we have this person on our team and until we're done, we're going to pay them. We're going to be able to provide Mike what they're going to be able to do with an estimate of hours and an estimate of cost. And that will be what he approves. And then he will also be getting our invoices for that as well each month.
How many employees do you anticipate hiring on this? Is this going to be several a month or just one?
So I too am uncomfortable with changing policy, and I too agree that if we do this, we need to do it on every single one across the board. We couldn't show favorism just on one. I also think it sounds like a really good idea for you to bring an employee in-house. So I was a little surprised when you just said that if it can't be reimbursed through this PFD draw, then you'll go the other way instead and put more money in and go slower. I mean, Peter, I think, had really good points about why this person is a much better choice. So if we don't change policy and we can't do this for you, would you not move ahead and save the money yourself and bring this? It's a part-time position, so.
I think I'm sorry, what was your question, Erin?
No, that's really it. I just ramble at the end of my sentences. Go ahead.
Certainly we think this is a time and cost savings. And so I would look to see if I could absorb it in my own departmental budget. That would be the next step. So the first step was to see if you would be willing to let us make an amendment to the ILA. And if not, I will take a look to see if I can absorb it in my budget. If I can't, then we will go ahead and move forward as the ILA is set forth currently.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I was also just going to add my last 2 cents. I think just go back and relook at that 5.7 versus 5.3. I believe we're talking about the same bucket of money, just which sliver is coming out from which side of the bucket.
Okay.
I don't think we're actually going to change any dollars and cents if we were to make this change. And then, you'd be taking us down that path to have to change this policy overall. So I would just go back and look at that, because then you're just saving that money back on what you would have to bring to the table later on there. So, yeah.
Okay, we will. Thank you.
So do we have a motion for the ILA revision?
Do we need, you mean, if we're against it, do you want a motion if we're against it?
No one does a
Okay.
motion. It'll just die here, right, Mike?
Correct.
So I'm still confused. What do we need, Pat? I'm sorry.
If we don't move,
He's asking if anyone is willing to put forth a motion to make the change as requested by our partner. If there is no motion, there is no change.
Okay. Let's move on. We'll move on to the next item then.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Carla,
Thank you.
I think you have the answer. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
And we'll move on to the Port Orchard update.
Yeah, let's see here. Let me get the Port Orchard folks in.
They looking to talk tonight?
That's all there is.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor.
You guys ready for my update? All right. So last Tuesday evening, the city council approved the terms of the purchase and sale with Kitsap Bank. Prior to that meeting, because I felt pretty confident that they were going to take that action, I have shared that purchase and sale with John, and he has shared it with Brian so that we can start a process to amend that ILA. And at a future meeting. And what, as you're aware, or at least Brian and John are aware of, that the bank has to design, construct a building before we can start construction on our building. And I believe I shared that with you at our last meeting. And last time I checked in with you guys, that's where we were headed because we'd selected that site. The terms of it are 42 months for the bank from closing. The clock starts on when we close on that. Major provision in this that we need. Remember, the current building is sitting half on fee simple property and half on a DNR lease, and that we have to get an assignment from DNR. Isn't going to be a problem. It's just time. And I believe that will take between 60 and 90 days for us to perfect that. And so that would be about the absolute soonest that we could close. The Department of Commerce, I've obtained $1.2 million from the legislature in this last legislative session. One of their conditions is I have to show them all the commitments and all of the other money that we have. And the current ILA says that I don't get this money for about a year and a half until we complete our design. So one of my asks is sooner versus later to amend that ILA for us to access those funds as soon as we have your funds and we're able to get the DNR lease assignment completed. We'll be able to close on the property. So I would hope that's no later than this fall, and potentially about 90 days from now. So I think your minutes from your meeting would suffice for our documentation to the Department of Commerce. And I don't know that we have to have the ILA modification done, at a breakneck speed. So things I asked for. So I heard your earlier discussion about bonding capacity, and I'm happy to. It is not our preference. I did offer that we could, and would take city council action for us to issue indebtedness. You're correct. Our bond rating is likely better than yours, but Kitsap County's is even better than ours, I would assume. And if we did do it, it would constrain, it would virtually use up all of our bonding capacity. And so it would put us, if we had to, we probably would, but it would put us in an uncomfortable place if we had some sort of a natural disaster and had to go get money to deal with that. So our preference is we all have a big kumbaya moment with Kitsap County and they get comfortable with issuing this indebtedness. And it makes me, so we're asking for some additional time on that ILA that we currently have to make the $1 million available sooner. I was a little nervous in your cash flow projections. They're about right. I think in 2025 is when we're going to need, to go to, that's when we hope to go to construction, provided we don't have any delays. But it shows there's savings from us being delayed nearly 3 years. And I would hope that you save that money and reduce the amount of borrowing we need versus pledge it to another project. But that's ultimately your guys' decision whether to do that or not. If we did bond it, I don't, and one of the things that makes me a little nervous in the ILA, it's really vague about the debt aspect of that. And it was never our intent to pay the interest on that. So if we had to borrow it, I would hope you're making the principal and interest payments, back to the city and not just a principal payment. So that is what I have for you tonight. And I'm available to answer any questions you have.
Okay, so what I'm assuming is you want to be able to move up or move the $1 million commitment up.
That would be a very valuable first step. And that would allow us to access the money with the Department of Commerce. And then we work on the other aspects of the ILA over the next month or two would be.
It looks like we do have the money in the holding fund. What do you think, Walt?
You're on mute there, Walt.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I think we do. I think I would run it by our financial advisors and have them move that $1 million up to this proposed earlier date and see what that does to the numbers. But I wouldn't think it would create much of an issue.
I think your projections you saw tonight showed that this year.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yes. When I don't have that document in front of me, when did that show the $1 million?
This year.
This year.
Well, you're talking about in 90 days.
Yeah, I mean,
Soonest.
I would say I'll make a motion there, but I just want to make sure if there's any other questions for the mayor, because I feel comfortable that we have it, Ryan. And there were some additional conversations over the weekend with Ryan and Scott, and there was basically negligible impact to the PFD and its funding, whether we allocated that immediately or over a course of time.
Yes. Are you making a motion, John?
I will. I was just going to wait to see if anybody else had a question for the mayor. Once I make my motion, he can't.
I just had one more comment, and I think Brian, you guys, we've changed legal counsel since we've entered into the ILA with you, and Brian is more familiar with the document. So I asked that you guys take the first stab at that, so that our attorney isn't having to start from ground zero, and then we'll engage our legal counsel with your proposed edits. So.
Brian, do you have any feedback to offer?
A little bit. Conceptually, we've agreed with our other partners to move the tasks around. So in one sense, what the mayor's asking for isn't out of order. And I think we always knew that the task sequencing was a good faith estimate as these ILAs were done, and pieces would have to be moved around. That said, on this one, advancing funds before other stages of the project are done, I just think from prudence standpoint, we need two things. Up front, like the Department of Commerce, I think we would need to just see a full funding plan that all the pieces are there for the city to acquire the property. That's not a big ask, and I don't think the city will have trouble doing that. But I just think on our side, we need to paper that we've done our due diligence, that there's funding there for this acquisition. The other piece is kind of risk analysis on the back end. If for example, despite all these great efforts that are going on, the SKCEC does not come to fruition, the board will have authorized money for a piece of property that isn't being devoted to a regional center. So I would think there should be need some discussion that in the very highly unlikely scenario that the regional center doesn't come to fruition, there's some obligation to send money back to the PFD. So we haven't sent money out on the books that was not for a regional center.
So I can answer some of Brian's questions. The funding is pretty simple. The property of that appraised for $3.9 million. We're getting it for 2.5. So we have $1.2 million coming from the Department of Commerce. It was in the capital budget from the legislature. We can get you a copy of that, showing that we've been allocated that money. They in turn want to see that your money's real too.
Contingent on the contingency.
Yeah. So everybody's asking for everybody else's, show that they've got their dollars. So that leaves us $300,000 short, and we fully plan to fund that from city resources. I don't need to go ask for anybody else's money on that. I'm not asking for anything more than what we had before, other than the fact that I'm just asking for the money sooner. We were gonna get to this money a year from now, and the sooner I get the cash, the sooner I can start the clock on the bank and the bank's project. And I think I spoke to that at the last meeting. So I understand your concern, but our city council is fully committed to this project.
So Brian, if you redo part of the ILA for this, a revision, would you be able to put something in there that we do get our money back if for some reason the project doesn't come to fruition?
Yeah, we would draft something up to be included in the ILA, and subject to negotiation with the city and their new attorneys. By the way, Mayor, I know the firm you work with now, Inslee Best. I work with them a lot as well, and I think you will be very well represented with them.
They've done an exceptional job for us for the past year.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to make sure I try and word this correctly, because I'm not authorizing the check to go out tonight, but I am going to make a motion that the PFD consider moving the one, is that 7.1? I don't have it in front of me.
Yes. Yes, it is.
That the funding for task 7.1 to be expedited to this year, 2021, upon completion of the reassignment of the DNR property.
Can I modify that slightly, conditioned upon those things that we talked about from Brian with, reimbursement and et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, it gives them time to fix it.
Proof from the Department of Commerce.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure our meeting minutes, Brian will fix the ILA probably before they need the money, but I need the meeting minutes to show for take to Commerce to free up their cash as well.
Okay, Mike, are you able to read back that motion? It was kind of long.
Not in its entirety, but I'll make an attempt. I usually go back to the tape and get the actual. So
because
John was moving that the PFD expedite access to funding for section 7, task 7.1 in the addendum, the attachment to the SKCEC ILA. I don't know if that's exactly what you said, but is that the flavor of it?
Correct.
Because I can get the exact language when I review the tape.
Well, go ahead.
I think John asked that that particular item be moved up to this calendar year. Mayor, does that meet your requirements, or were you looking for like 90 days?
I was just trying to provide some flexibility for Brian to get the ILA fixed, which will get everything fixed while still meeting the mayor's need to have meeting minutes to show the Commerce.
I don't know that what you're doing tonight is helping us a great deal with Commerce until I talk to Commerce, what level of documentation they want. I mean, I have an agreement, but it has a date outside though too of I've got a year to spend that money from Commerce, and I'd be at the end of that year before this money's really available to me. So the water's muddy.
As it is now.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
You need me to authorize that money currently, even though we don't,
Yeah, I'm not certain that your motion will
suffice.
meet the spirit of what you guys are intending. And I've got to go back to my city council and talk to them about a provision, because we don't have a provision right now. A year from now, we get the $1 million and we don't have a provision that says we have to build. I mean, we're intending to build the community center. We don't have that type of provision currently, and you're wanting to impose something new upon us. It'd be some catastrophic war event, or gosh, I mean, we've had tornadoes and now a pandemic, but I don't think things would stop us. They're just going to slow us down, and then we need to work together to make sure we get to the finish line. Because I don't get the $9 million without us having a master plan project. I mean, I'm juggling a whole bunch of balls here. And I'm mindful that I don't get to the finish line and get to your $9 million unless I have a master plan project with a bank headquarters.
So what do you think you would need from us tonight as far as a motion?
I think, Brian, are we really that concerned? It's our number one project. Are we worried about them running off and not constructing their project?
So would you need a commitment within 90 days, do you think?
That would help.
Okay.
Yeah, you would fund within 90 days.
Would you be able to get the ILA revision done by then, Brian?
Yes, that sounds eminently reasonable. So my suggestion is, make the motion as you're intending, for the time commitment, and then just have the funding component, subject to board approval of an amended ILA.
Does that make sense, John?
I think so. I would just sort of say, so I think we need to start that fresh.
So yeah, you'd have to withdraw your motion, I believe.
I'm going to withdraw the current motion and present the new updated motion of releasing the funding for land acquisition as demonstrated in current ILA task 7.1 to be free to be used within the next 90 days concurrently with council amending a new ILA.
Can I make a comment on that? To be available, or maybe not to be used. In other words, if it takes them 120 days or something, I don't want the 90 days to be anything. So
I acquiesce to that.
I guess
go ahead.
Are we still open for discussion, or do we need? Okay. I guess my thinking with Brian's comment about the reimbursement is, if this were only going to be issued a year from now, they would be further down the project. I think things would be a little more certain than if we issue it in the next 90 days. I'm not saying, they're going to have to return it, if they don't build the thing within a year. But if they buy property and, things are less certain now than they would be in a year. In a year's time, when this was originally going to be released, there was more that they were going to be investing. Things would be more certain. So I think the concern about it not going forward would be less in a year. So I think Brian's comment is a little better taken, because they're asking to move it up by a year. So I think that there's that. I think it's appropriate to make that change that he talked about, versus saying, well, you didn't require it when you were originally going to issue it in a year, so you shouldn't require it now. I think it's appropriate to maybe require it now, as a condition of it being released earlier than expected. And certainly if as Mayor said, they're moving forward with it, and I fully believe they are, then that becomes something of a moot point. But as a stopgap, if it doesn't, that money comes back.
Okay. So then we have John's motion. Do we have a second?
I'll say. Second.
Okay, discussion?
See my prior comments. That's all.
Yeah, I don't know that I have that worry. I don't know what the city's gonna do with that piece of land if they don't build a community event center on it. I think there's a whole nother set of can of worms that would be open, so I don't have that concern, and I would not require that.
Yeah, I believe we have to be somewhat flexible with our number one project. So, and this is what they need, and we're gonna fund them no matter what, they're number one.
Well, my comment is, yeah, if they're making the purchase of the bank property, they're pretty much going all in at this point. So, yeah, I think it's up to us to support that effort.
Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And all not in favor, nay? Okay, so the motion carries. So Mayor, is that what you're gonna need?
Devil's in the details when I see Brian's amendment to the ILA. So, I hope so, but I've got
back, I guess, huh?
I got, like Mike, I have 7 bosses, and I got to sell them on this. So we'll be back.
So it sounds like it's a firm commitment, though.
Yeah, I know we've got an agreement that says you're going to give it to us anyway. I'm just trying to move things faster, and that's really the intent here. Is just to move things faster, and that shouldn't make you nervous that I want to move faster.
We have to be flexible.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Okay.
No, it'd only make us nervous if you wanted to walk out with a check right now.
Yeah.
It's going to go to escrow to buy a piece of real estate, and the real estate's not going anywhere.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
So we'll move on to the event funds now.
Okay, I've got some more people to bring in, so give me a moment.
Hi, Kitsap PFD board.
Hello. Oh, okay. So I saw just one person. So both of you are there. That's
We're
good.
both here. We're in air conditioning at the moment.
Good plan.
Yes, as needed. So the first topic is Northwest Food Truck Fest, which was previously approved by you guys 2019 for 2020. So we did some revisions and updated the plan because of COVID. We have implemented some changes to include ticketing and staggering ticket sales so that we can crowd control. That looks like that's going to go away potentially at the end of the month. So that's amazing. But either way, we have utilized the funds that were preset to market and have really focused in on social media. And we also did some drone footage and created a commercial to help advertise the concert grounds. So we originally did look at extending the time frame, but we are sticking with the 11 to 7 per the fairgrounds requirements. So that's the only change from that document going forward. But we've really focused again on that social media, Facebook and Instagram, and really building that up. Our ticket sales have launched and have been received very well so far. Again, eventually that might go away and we might change some things up from that, but everything is moving along. We did have to do a COVID plan for the county parks. And so we had to create that from the ground up as well. And I think, yeah, that's
30,000 hits.
Yeah. So do you have any questions on the Northwest Food Truck Fest?
What was the date of it again?
July 17th, and it's at Concert Park at the Kitsap Fairgrounds. We have 9 food trucks, 9 food vendors, 5 bands, another 40 vendors, and we've already hit 30,000 hits on social media, over 30,000. So it's got a great reach, and it's really exploding.
So you've already spent the money on the advertising and stuff since it's.
Yeah, mostly in process still, but yes.
Yes, we actually have a Tesla organization coming over from Seattle as well, and doing a car show. And we have a beer garden and CK Fire and Rescue coming out, and a bunch of things happening.
Yeah,
So are you asking for additional money for this year?
No.
So what happened is those funds that you've already approved to us rolled over to this year. So Mike wanted us to come in and chat with you and give you an update because those funds weren't used in 2020. Very small amount was, but they're being used for this year's event. And then
this is just a status report.
Mostly, and I think we will be coming back to you to ask for funding for next year's event.
So then, Mike, they won't need a vote on this since we've already approved it, correct?
Correct. This is an update. There's no revisions. There's no ask for any money. And in the PFD expenses voucher, there's an item in there for $3,000 plus, which is the extension of what they started to do last year, but what they have continued to do this year prior to this meeting.
Yeah, so the only changes really were that we did have some additional expenses because of COVID. We had to, rent fencing and additional restrooms, porta potties, hand washing stations, have a COVID plan in place, so we did wind up with some additional expenses to put on this event, but either way, we're making it happen and we're moving forward, so.
Okay. Any other questions?
No.
If not, we'll move on to the next one then.
Okay.
Well, real quick, I noticed that you asked for 10,000 on that, and our policy is 5,000 per event.
Okay, for the next one.
Yes.
Okay. So I do have a PowerPoint on this one as well.
Okay, I'll stop sharing and I'll let you have that.
Okay.
Okay, I will need to promote you. Just a moment.
Thank you. So as Mike's doing that, I don't know that we introduced ourselves. I'm Sunny Saunders with Sunny Jack Events, and this was Brenda Kelly with Kelly Marketing. We put on events, large-scale events in Kitsap County. I managed the fair and rodeo for 8 years. I currently manage Blackberry Festival and have other events that we do. The event I'm going to present to you now is an event that I've had in the works for over 5 years. And let's see, share screen. This event, funny enough, I had already filled out the PFD application 5 years ago. And so I am so excited to present this to you. I've been wanting to do this for so long. Sorry, just a second. So this event is called the PNW Outdoor Life Expo. This is an outdoor show. Kitsap County doesn't have an outdoor sportsman show. They have a gun show. Some smaller things have been tried to come to fruition, but nowhere have we ever had a real outdoor show, at least in the last 25 years. This would include boats, kayaking, RVing, fishing, a really broad range. And this coincides perfectly with the fact that we are now a national water trail. The tourism in Kitsap County has really exploded in the last few years, as well as housing. So this event really brings everything together. The goal is to create an all-inclusive sportsman show at the Kitsap County Fairgrounds. We would have that in the Kitsap Sun Pavilion as well as surrounding area. This would be a 2-day event. All of these pictures are from Kitsap County, by the way, just so you know. So this is to draw tourism into Kitsap County and support the businesses we do have here as well. So we were asking for $10,000. I understand $5,000 is the option. This would include print, digital, social media, reader boards, posters. We're looking at possible cable TV partnerships and cross-promoting through other various groups. We've already purchased the URL on it, and the logo has been created. Well, we just need to do a little updating. Gosh, I don't see where we have the date in here. February 28th, 27th and 28th is penciled in for the fairgrounds for us to put this event on. So we expect at least 5,000 people. Our target market is men, 30 to 50, and mothers who arrange for family outings. Target audience is 75,000 combined income or more, so they have the available income to spend on recreation. And 60 and up for RVing and recreation. Yeah. The economic impact for a show like this could be quite large. I'm going to move my little window here, guys. Sorry, I can't see part of my screen. The sales tax revenue up to $100,000. So there would be RV sales, boat sales, equipment sales, as well as a variety of other booths. We would be looking at approximately 90 different vendors. Like I mentioned, there is no outdoor, all-inclusive outdoor show in Kitsap County, and being the gateway to the Olympic Peninsula, I really feel that this is something the community needs, as well as to bring tourism in. Some of the features we would have, a kids fishing hole, pond, kind of like you see at some of those other outdoor shows, craft beer garden. We would have a variety of speakers on topics and possible celebrity appearance. This show has a budget of approximately $30,000 to put on, and we would self-produce that. Some of the vendors are boating, gardening, biking, climbing, survivalist, including some nonprofits like Ducks Unlimited, Rocky Mountain Elk, who has a very active club in the area, as well as a variety of other things.
How many elk are members of the foundation? Okay, I'm sorry. I couldn't pass that.
So just to recap, this would be in February of 2022. It is a large event, and we really believe that there's a need in the community as well as outside the area for a show like this.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So you're asking for $5,000, correct?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion.
I move approval of $5,000 in event funding for the PNW Outdoor Expo.
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion? No? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No nays? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're
So
welcome.
excited. Been waiting a very long time to do this, and we're excited to bring it to Kitsap. Thank
Well,
you.
we certainly hope that you're successful with this. I think that there's a lot of promise of this. Are there any shows like this in the neighboring counties, like up in the Olympic Peninsula or down in Mason County?
No. And we want to draw those communities in. Yeah, the closest one is Tacoma.
Very
Yeah.
good.
Thank you.
And now on to the financials.
Okay, let me take just a moment here to help them exit.
And if I may make a request, and this is just me sitting in a room that we have air conditioning, but it's not very good. If we can try to go through these faster than normal before I melt, I would really appreciate that. So,
Yes.
yeah, thanks.
Okay, so let me share this and get going on it. Sorry, this is all of their stuff that we've been through. All right. On the sales tax rebate issue, our income last month, $188,771 and a nickel. That's up 49%, almost 50% over last year, because that was our most heavily impacted COVID year, or COVID month rather. So we're still doing well. That resulted in almost $100,000 of net cash.
Mike, real fast, John ended up in attendees. So want I drag him back here in case he's got comments?
I'm sorry, what?
John ended up in attendees rather than up here with us, so he can't comment. Can you drag him back over to us?
Okay, just a moment. Why did he go over there? Did I do that to you, John? Is he back yet? Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions about the financials? You want to move on to the blanket vouchers?
Well, I'll give you, these were sent to you. These are the first sheet is the balance, shows where we're spending money, shows the category, shows the balance that's left. So we still got plenty of money there. This also shows the $3.6 million that we have in cash reserves now, that there's plenty to pay the $1 million out of before the end of the year. And the guys, financial guys, had demonstrated that that was not going to have substantial impact. So this is the voucher for our expenses, $8,412.34. Legal expenses, my expenses, sound publishing, and this is the $4,000 down at the bottom, $4,132.08 from Sonny Jack that they've spent so far the first part of this year to promote the event they're going to have this month. So the total is $8,412.34.
Okay. You have a motion for approval of the blanket voucher?
I'll move to approve the blanket voucher in the amount of, okay, you got to scroll down again, Mike, sorry.
$8,412.34.
Thank you. As presented.
We have a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Who
Okay.
seconded?
Discussion?
Who was the second?
Walt.
Well,
Walt?
yes.
Okay.
No discussion. All in favor, aye.
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 All not in favor, nay. None. Okay. Blanket vouchers approved.
Okay.
Mike, the gallery view was turned off, and then we have a request to have it turned back on.
That's an individual setting.
Does that cover everybody?
Hank, can you see what you needed to see?
I'll move to approve the Paulsbo Perk invoice of 9,253.35.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? No. All in favor, aye.
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 Any nays? Nope. The Paulsbo perk is approved, and we'll move on to the Port Orchard.
All right, the Port Orchard is $52,000.03, two different invoices covering the work that's been done the last couple of months.
I move to approve the blanket voucher as presented.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
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 Any nays? Nope. Okay. And we'll move on to the Port of Bremerton invoice approval.
This is the invoice that was left last month. You chose to approve the first one because it was basically overdue and wanted to review this. This was sent out Wednesday along with the rest of the documents. So you've had a chance to review this. Brings them up to 10.8% of project complete. The amount of $69,003.
And my understanding, Mike, was it that Barker Creek has reviewed this also?
That is correct.
Cindy put that in the chat. She had internet issues, so Shannon has reviewed phase 3 and finds no exception.
So I move that, do we have to move this to,
Yeah.
We do or do not?
I believe we
Yes.
do.
Approval only, no payment.
Right, okay. So I
Yeah,
move
it's
that we,
not approval for payment. It's
Yeah, I'll second.
only approving that that's an
Gotcha.
acceptable.
Any
Yeah.
discussion? All in favor, aye.
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 And any nays? Nope. Okay. So with that, we'll move on to the ED report, regional facilities report, which you can read on your own. And we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting if that's good for everybody.
That's great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's at 7:25.
Go cool off, Phil.
Thank you. All right.
All right.
Bye,
Good
everyone.
night.
Bye.
Thank you all
Bye-bye.
for your patience and endurance.
Thank you, Mike.